Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that some stories and discussions in this episode of Radiant Resilience may touch on sensitive and potentially triggering topics. These may include themes of addiction and alcoholism, mentions of emotional stress and depression, conversations about relationship breakdown and divorce, reflections on the challenges of parenting during separation. Our goal is to share real life experiences in a respectful and empathetic manner, offering insights into the complexities of the human spirit and the journey towards resilience. However, we understand that some content might be difficult for listeners. We encourage you to prioritize your well being and discretion when deciding to listen. Please remember this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice or support. If you find yourself needing assistance, we urge you to seek help from qualified professionals or trusted support systems. Your mental and emotional health is important to us. Thank you for your courage and for joining us in the space of understanding and compassion. Welcome back to Radiant Resilience, everyone. We are back with Courtney. So if you haven't already, please go back and listen to the last episode. She shared a pretty vulnerable story about an abusive relationship and drug addiction and things like that. Definitely go back and listen to that. But we are back with Courtney, and she is now going to fast forward from that relationship. She's currently going through a divorce, and we thought that would be a good thing to talk about for those out there going through divorce. So do you want to talk a little bit about that story?
Yeah, so I think I touched on it on the other episode of how meeting my husband was a very safe choice in comparison to the relationship that I had experienced before. So he was very quiet and easygoing and me do what I was doing, and I didn't need to ask permission, or I didn't need him to chaperone me and things like that. So also in a very big way, he took enough of a step back within our relationship that I could flourish into who I am now.
Mm.
Um, which was much needed. And now that as I'm saying it, I'm like, good on him, whether he's
Mm.
conscious of it or not.
Yeah.
Um, but he he was older than me. My soon to be ex-husband is 7-ish years older than me. When we started dating and getting married and stuff, I was 21, 22, 23,
Okay.
and it was very much like drinking and barbecues and having a good time and making friends and doing all of that stuff. That the differences between men and women are huge in that way, because we were dating, having a good time. We had jobs, we did all that stuff. That was super great. And then we got married, and then we started having babies. And when you get pregnant and you're pregnant for 9 months and you can't drink, and I don't know what happens to you, a million things happen to you, but physically, mentally, all that stuff, you start nesting and you start evolving into this mother force, and they're still drinking, and you become the designated driver, or I don't know, you're uncomfortable, so you're just doing your own thing while he's doing whatever, going golfing and stuff like that, and you're starting to experience physical limitations because you're giant pregnant and
Mm.
all of that. And it was after, so I had my first baby at 24, and then I had my second baby at 27. And you just start to notice that your partner is drinking this many times a week, or they're having
Mm.
this many drinks per night, or they're behaving this kind of way. And for the record, my he was a sloppy drunk more than anything. No abuse, nothing like that. But it was gross. But you get through this. So I was with him for 18, 19 years.
Oh, wow.
but you're busy, you're having babies or you're raising babies or you have toddlers, or then one kid is in school. And after I had my daughter, I think she was like 18 months old, that's when I bought my salon.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I had these two young kids and had taken on salon ownership, and I had a full clientele behind the chair. So, like the frog and water analogy again, you don't really recognize all the things that are happening in your life or that you've come to accept because you're just busy and distracted and all of that stuff. And but the drinking has always bothered me. Um, so that's the number one reason why I'm choosing to get divorced, is that like throughout our marriage, he was a great choice as a first husband. I joke about that. He was a great choice as a first husband. He was an incredible choice as the father of my kids because he loves to like go to their events and things like that. But I could never really depend on him if I had a situation at the salon, or because something that has come up a lot as a salon owner or just working late and stuff like that is like transient type people who sometimes get confrontational and stuff like that. My husband was not someone I could ever call and be like, hey, would you meet me down at the salon and just escort me to and from or whatever? There's this person that's been hanging around or whatever. And he was never my first call. And then after years of that, he wasn't even like my fifth call. But then again, that was me becoming this fiercely independent person where I'm like, why do I have to call anybody at all? So I got comfortable with guns
Oh,
and different
wow.
weapons and things like that. And I became like a concealed carry
Hmm.
person just so that I don't ever want to do that, even though I joke that I do. I probably Just a lot of truth in that probably, but I don't want to have to depend on someone. It would gut me that I couldn't call him for something.
Yeah.
And that stuff just starts to wear on you. And then when you get to this place where you're like, I don't need, then you wonder why you're in this relationship at all.
Yeah.
So that was like the biggest thing, probably, that was the contributor to the dissolution of our marriage. And then because I was so fiercely independent and because he just was a homebody kind of a thing, we didn't do anything together. We didn't go out on little dates or anything. If we did, then I would have to plan it. So it was something else I had to do. So then I was like, forget this. I don't need something else to do.
Started drifting apart, basically.
Yeah. And then we had done marriage counseling at one point because at that point, the drinking was the biggest problem.
Mhm.
And so we went to marriage counseling for probably 6 months or something. And I had a date in my head that if things hadn't changed by a certain point or with enough change, that I was going to pull the plug then. But we did really well for a few years after that.
Okay.
And then, um,
Did he quit the drinking in that time frame or no? That still continued.
mhm.
Mhm.
And there were certain friends, I mean, with anything, there's certain friends that he would like drink more with.
Yeah.
And that would always be a little bit scary because I was the main provider. So I worked 9 to 9.
Oh,
The
wow.
only time I got to see my kids was taking them to daycare. And then I would come home or whatever. But sometimes I would get off work early and I would come home. And when you get to that drunk point where you can't see straight, you've got the spin.
Mhm.
I would look at him and he like his eyes would be like darting
Oh,
back and
wow.
forth. So he was wasted. You have a 3 year old and a 6 year old. You can't, if something happened to them, you couldn't take them anywhere.
Yeah.
If one of them scampered off somewhere, you'd have no idea. So I don't know, as a mother, that really messed with me.
Mm.
And he would plan things around it. Oh, these certain days when he would try to make efforts to contain his drinking. Like he'd
Mhm.
have certain days that he would be drinking or whatever. But so if I had a thing, say I had an event at the salon or something, and it would be on one of those days, he would opt out of coming to support me to do
Mhm.
the thing because it was a drinking day. So I don't know, just you can't really ever reconcile being number two, number three, number four to something like alcohol. Um,
Sure.
yeah. And then fast forward to COVID.
Mm.
I had relocated my salon. I had, I don't know, I think 18 girls by that point that worked at my salon. As far as my marriage goes, I don't think that he knew hardly anybody that worked there.
Oh,
He didn't know really anything about my business or anything like that because there would be different little comments like when we got shut down, like at least I'm still working or things like that. And I'm just like, I'm trying to keep morale up. I'm doing all this research to help my girls get grants and
and you said you had
food stamps.
18
If
girls working for you?
hmm
That's a
well,
lot of girls that were
I have
then
booth
out of
rent.
work.
Yeah. 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 And one of the girls used to tell me, it's not your responsibility to whatever. I'm like, I know it's not my responsibility, but the mama bear be strong. I felt some responsibility to just make sure that we could weather this.
Yeah,
I was in an okay position. I had savings and stuff like that. I didn't like it for sure. I didn't know if everything that I had worked for was now on the line,
for sure.
and
It's
I
a
was going to
scary
lose it
time.
all. Yeah. But him being so disconnected from, because we would never even really talk by that point. If we did talk, it was very superficial or very focused on the kids or whatever. And because I didn't trust him, I didn't trust
Yeah.
him with my feelings. I didn't trust him with to even remember the information because that
Mhm.
side effect of like alcoholism and stuff,
Yeah.
you
Huge.
don't retain anything. And after years and years of drinking, you can only imagine just I don't know. All
Wow.
that stuff is super annoying, but I'm trying to like keep these girls together, researching grants, food stamps, whatever it is to help them get through whatever. And then, oh, but just before that, he had cheated. And that was like the first time that I had ever questioned that he
Mhm.
loved me. No
Oh,
matter what we had been through, I knew that I was his person, that he loved me, I loved him. Maybe this wasn't the most ideal situation, but we had this beautiful family. We could make things work. There was enough deeply rooted that when the kids grew up and moved out of the house or whatever, maybe we'd like refocus and because everything was rooted in love, right?
yeah.
But then he had cheated the November before COVID happened. And so I was still grappling with that.
Oh,
And
that's so much to deal with.
yeah, and not to make excuses because that's absolutely not what I'm doing. Luckily, there wasn't full intercourse, like there wasn't full
Okay.
anything like that. But then on the flip side, because he's an alcoholic, he was drinking, got super wasted, and ended up fooling around with one of his very good friends' girlfriends. And so he not only destroyed what we had, but destroyed that
Mm.
friendship for both of us
Yeah.
and all of that. And so then a few months later, COVID happened,
Mm.
and we're so detached, anyways, that I don't know. It was just a lot. And then everyone had their own experience through COVID, but very few people could say that it was a good one.
For sure.
All of that compiled on each other just
Yeah.
made for a really sad, defeating, like questionable period of time.
Yeah.
And so normally when I start getting super antsy and restless kind of feeling, like just overwhelmed with stuff, I take my kids on a road trip.
Hmm.
So I took my kids on a road trip. We hit the Dakotas. We went as far as Minnesota. Like
Nice.
we went through Wyoming and part of Nebraska and all of it. We went like a big loop through like prairie land.
Yeah.
And I came back and it was almost immediately back to those same gross feelings, which was new for me. Cause normally I could drive 5,000 miles, come back and I'd be like, okay, I got another like 18 months in me before I need another road trip.
Oh, I
Like
love that for you.
we've
You
got
like love
this.
that you found that for yourself.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But I came back and it was just back into the like slums of it all and the
Mm.
feelings and the I don't want to be here. And what the fuck am I doing? And how do I fix this? And all of that. So that is when I chose to walk away from my clientele. I had a baby stylist that had just graduated beauty school. She had wanted to come work at my salon. The joke at my salon is that we have the most incestuous salon because I own the salon with my mom. The baby stylist that came, her mom worked for me. I have a set of sisters. One of the sisters' daughters works for me, and then
Oh,
their cousin
wow.
works for me, and then I have another set of sisters. So that's what she means by incestuous. Everybody's connected somehow. So I had this baby stylist come and I was like, I can't take this anymore. I have plenty of money in savings. I'm gonna figure this out. I need to go away because when you get to the point where you rather like stab someone in the jugular than trim their dirty, dusty ends or split ends or whatever, then like you got problems.
Yeah, for
And so
sure.
I'll say, for the
You're not
greater good.
enjoying it anymore at that point.
No,
Yeah.
no, because at that point it was all vaccine talk and your
Yeah.
responsibility to the world and whatever. And because this baby stylist came, I offloaded my clientele onto her,
Nice.
and that was good. And I stopped doing, I was home. I got to be with my kids and
Mm.
I started Good Richard. But because things had slowed down hugely compared to the last 15 years of my life, I had a lot more time to think about things and
Mm.
sort of overcome shed the ick of COVID, and because everyone was doing okay. We were back to work. We'd been back to work for a year. The girls were good. Everyone was good. So I got to shed all of that and just, this is not my problem anymore. I can just be with my kids. I got to be with my kids.
You didn't have anything
Um,
distracting you anymore from
yeah.
facing the
Like,
problems.
and
Hmm.
I got the excitement and of diving into Good Richard and building that up,
Hmm.
which I love. I love every part of business building like that. But then in the quiet moments, I was like, am I happy?
Yeah.
What will make me happy? What's making me unhappy? Because it feels a lot grosser when you have a lot more time on your hands to really assess how much you're not talking to your partner
Mm.
or how uninvolved they are in your life or vice versa. Because I'm not innocent in all of this. I don't have a drinking problem, but like I'm an asshole. So, this is what we have. And I'm a steamroller, which has worked for us for a long time. It worked. I was still trying to get past the cheating.
Sure.
And then I guess too, like when you break trust like that and you question if they love you at all, or, and that's extreme, but that's how I felt. I can only
Yeah.
imagine that's how it feels extreme in that moment
Yeah.
for you also. Um, that everything else becomes bigger. The small things become so much bigger. Um, if he moved, if I had something of mine or the kids's on his side of the room, which I didn't realize we had sides of the room, but
Mm.
he would move it to my side of the room, even if it was the kids' stuff. I started noticing all the little petty things that he would
Mm.
do. And so that became bigger. And even though I was more available and more involved in our family, he still opted out of things. So
Yeah.
the justifications that I gave things before no longer applied. And
Mm.
so then that was very confusing of, oh, I guess this wasn't why he couldn't participate, or maybe it's
Mm.
me, or those things. And then I got to the place where I was like, what would life be like alone or divorced or without him?
Mm.
And then I started, that feels scary at first.
Sure.
And then I started to almost fantasize about what life would be like without him.
Oh, that's a
Um,
big sign.
yeah.
Yeah.
And not necessarily other people that would be in my
Sure.
life, but just I'm already independent. But I almost feel like I'm like dragging around 190 pounds of just bleh. And so if I didn't have that, if I didn't have him, would I be happier, or how would this feel, and things like that. And so I ultimately came to the decision that yes, this is what I want. It would be better for me to live my life solo than to keep trying to make this work, or keep
Mm.
trying to meet in the middle, sacrifice parts of me and
Mm.
sacrifice parts of him to make this work. And
Yeah.
there's no fault in humans evolving. Sometimes you just grow apart.
Yeah, for sure.
And that has to be okay. You can't, I at least am not of the school of you stay for the kids. You
Hmm.
should certainly consider them in your decision making, obviously.
It's going to affect him regardless.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
I'm also not of the school of thought of you've been married for this long. What's the difference?
Mm.
About 30 years, I hope.
Yep.
That's the difference. I don't know what the future holds for me, but I'm willing to risk it. I know what this is like. I know I have almost 20 years of experience in this relationship. I know what the future holds.
Yeah.
And then after I finally reached that decision of this is what I want, then came the super duper hard part of having the conversations. And I was terrified. I was terrified because I'm also not the type of person that like ultimatums people, because it
Mm.
has come up quite a bit in conversations with friends and stuff of why didn't you just ask him to quit drinking or stuff like that. And I'm like, the same reason I don't ask him to go on trips anymore. It's not who he is. And
Mhm.
that's not fair of me to ask him to do something. Is it for the betterment and greater good of him if he didn't drink? Absolutely. Medically speaking, health speaking, sure.
And I'm
But
sure you
like,
guys have had those like there's no way he was clueless to the fact that was a problem, right?
because can you imagine me not sharing my thoughts? Like,
Yeah. But for me, it would be like I would want you to quit because you want because you knew it was better for yourself. I think that addicts always need to do that for themselves, always.
mhm,
Otherwise, I don't know that they will
it
actually
won't stick.
succeed,
Yeah.
succeed. And then also do it for us. Like you want him, you don't want to tell him. I guess if you give him an ultimatum, then he is doing it for you, but you want him to want to do it for you guys. And it wasn't new news to him, right?
Yeah.
So he could have made that choice
At any point.
way earlier on, and he did
Yeah.
not.
It would be stupid to not recognize that for what it is. He's a grown man. He knew what the issues were, that at least that I had, or whatever.
Sure.
He could have made that decision at any point, just like you just said, especially if not for necessarily, it should be start with him, but also like he wasn't even willing to do that for his kids. So he's certainly not going to do it for me. At least that was my assumption.
Sure.
But I'm also not willy-nilly in the sense that I'm like, I want a divorce. I'm not just going to
Right.
throw that out there either.
Right.
I've never said that to him, like not in any fight or anything.
Like if
I
you're
then
going to
I'll
put
just
that out
divorce him,
there, you're
right?
going to be ready to probably go through with it.
Which is really unfortunate because that there was no going back for me when I finally had that conversation. There was nothing he could say, nothing he could do to change my mind. I
Yeah.
was so at peace with and I had already mourned everything. I was so depressed and so fat and unhappy. And I wore freaking yoga pants for not even cute ones, just worn out, like hanging off my butt yoga pants, barely put lashes on, didn't give a shit
Mhm.
what my hair looked like. I've never experienced depression really at all, but certainly not like that.
Or that, you mean?
Yeah. And
Mhm.
so I just was in like a super gross space, like super gross. And so I had already worked through a lot of my feelings about it, and not even just involving him, but like my kids and stuff. Okay,
Yeah.
they're these ages. If Everything went according to plan. How would I tell them? What would life look like after? How could I reassure them? And the co parenting thing. In a perfect world, I would love to have a co parent that we don't just do things together around the kids, but we do it in a warm way that doesn't make anybody feel uncomfortable, other
Yeah.
than maybe potential partners in the future, just because
Yeah.
like they would be closer or whatever. But
But you can cross that bridge when you get there.
and so I just already had certain visions in my mind of, okay, we are going to be the poster children of whatever this looks like. What I forgot to do was factor in a whole ass other person after I had the conversation with him.
Oh,
Because it took, I wasn't ready. It took months for me to convince him, because worth mentioning is that I tried not to have conversations with drinking, the drinking version.
okay.
Sometimes it would happen, but also there's the residual effects of he drank last night. And so he's not entirely with it the next day, kind of a thing. So there's this weird double dutch of when to have good conversations. Plus, when you're feeling anxious about whatever, you just want to talk about it now and all that stuff. So I told him I wanted a divorce, that it wasn't fair of me to ask him to be this and this. We've grown apart. Nobody's at fault. One thing I didn't love is the drinking, that there were these other things that made me question whatever, but we've grown apart and that's okay. Maybe
Yeah.
we just aren't the best match for each other anymore. We've made a beautiful family. We can do this for them. This is my hope for the future, whatever. I had that same conversation probably every 3 days for
Oh,
probably
wow.
close to 5, 6 months, because
Wow.
he didn't understand. He thought we were getting divorced on paper, which wouldn't benefit me at all. He thought we were getting divorced on paper, but then we were still going to date and essentially have relations and all these things. And I was like, no. And I was trying to tell him gently without ripping out his heart, and therefore mine too, because
Yeah.
I didn't ever want to be divorced. That's not why you get married.
Yeah.
But this is where we were. And it would be like we'd have this conversation, maybe we'd have it sober, and then he would start drinking. And
Mm.
because at this point, we've had separate bedrooms for a year,
Oh,
I would
wow.
say, because of just us just not getting along and needing our own space. And his drinking, it stinks, and he like excretes it out of his whatever, and it just is
What
gross.
happened?
Anyway,
Yeah.
so we'd have a conversation sober. He would drink that night, the next night, whatever. So then drunk husband is processing this. So then drunk husband has questions. And so then he'd ask questions, but then you can't really communicate with the drunk husband. And then if you did try to skirt over some things, then the next morning, the sober husband, and it was re-victimizing for both of us for months
Mm.
of the same conversation, which I think is very abnormal from what I hear, but it was awful. And I'd get letters under the door and just di- different things. And there was a lot of anger towards me.
Mm.
And just to have to hear all of that over and over on loop was just, it was really hard, really
Mm.
hard. It finally reached a point where it was so needly, either backhanded, whatever, is I love you so much, I don't want this, like, but you did blah, 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 or
Mm.
you always made me feel blah, 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 blah. So it was always like backhanded something,
Yeah.
which is fine. Get out whatever you need to get out. But it reached a point where it had been enough time. We had enough conversations that you're either going to get with the program
Yeah.
and we're going to move forward like this, or you're not going to get with the program and we're going to move forward this different way. And so essentially, I said, if you do not stop doing what these different things or whatever, we will still co-parent, but it will be the iciest, coldest, most clinical interaction you've ever experienced in all your life. So you can
Mm.
either choose We can choose to be friends and warm and do the things, or you can have nothing at all and it will be very like 4 p.m. Sunday, whatever that looks like. And I was like, don't say any more words now. Process that, think it over, make a decision.
Yeah,
It's all in your court now. So it took him a couple of days and then he opted to have the friendship.
that's good.
Yeah. So for the last 6 months, 6-ish months, we have been trying really hard. And it has been like night and day.
Mm,
Like
interesting.
he finally reconciled that we are getting divorced. That is happening. Nothing is changing that. And that we go to the grocery store because we still live together for
Hmm.
right now. He's about to move out like in the next 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
But we go grocery shopping almost every week, and we have certain nights of the week that he cooks and I cook so that it's like split. We try to eat dinner together either as a family or something like that so that it has actually been really nice for my kids to dip their toes into this
Yeah.
because like when other people get divorced, I don't actually know. My parents are still married, but very behind closed doors. And then all of a sudden dad's
Hmm.
moving out and it's
Yeah.
very stark or happens really fast and they can still come to each of us. We have a family group chat now, which we never had before.
Interesting.
And so my kids, I feel like have adjusted really well.
And they know
Um,
what's going on then. They know that
mhm,
the divorce is happening and
yeah. And my daughter is cute, which you wouldn't normally put that in the same sentence, but my daughter is very cute about it because she was like, because this summer their dad is moving out. Last summer is or last spring is when we had the big divorce talk. And
Mm.
so she's, can we just not have a summer like last summer when you guys got divorced? She thinks it already happened.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but she's, I just don't want another summer like that. So if we could
Oh,
keep that to a minimum, that would be great. And
yeah.
so I'm like, you got it, babe. But they've had their dad for this last year, like here, and we have made conscious efforts to be warm. And if we, because we've argued, but
Sure.
we try to do it when they're gone or something like that. And I don't know. I I feel like we're doing okay now.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
I think
Um,
that's one of the hugest things for the kids, especially is if you can, I feel like that's when it gets ugly is when the parents are ugly towards each other and then try to, whether intentionally or unintentionally, turn the kids against the other or whatever. And that's going to be your more traumatizing situation to those kids versus still providing a good, safe space for them. And they know that they can go to either one of you or whatever. I don't know. Being a hairdresser, I've talked to people who have done it a million different ways. And I think that kids suffer the least when the parents can be amicable together.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't, and I think it's been helpful that on the back end of things where division of assets and things like that has also been amicable
Oh, good.
because
That
like
doesn't always go nice.
no, and I don't know. It's been there's only one thing that we didn't agree on, and it was just we just didn't talk about it for a few months, and then it came back
Revisited.
up, and someone had clearly done a little more research and understood that the request was not unreasonable.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. It's a little weird. I think I get a lot of comments from people of just, are you guys working things out? Or it's a little weird that, I don't know, that you guys give each other hugs and stuff like that. And we don't hug all the time, but I still want my kid, we were married in love. They were conceived in love. We are divorcing in love,
That's their
not in love
father.
with each other, but love for each other. I don't care if it's weird. I don't care about anybody but the two littles and then a little bit for the ex. Enough, obviously, not just like a teensy bit, but I don't care what anybody else thinks. I know that it's weird. I know that it's unconventional, but this, nobody's confused anymore.
And everybody's journey is different. Whatever works for you may not work for someone else, and that's okay. And you guys are doing what's best for you and your family and your kids and each other. And I think it's very fortunate that you guys are able to do that without anybody getting nasty about it.
Yeah, it's going to be, there's like a whole future couple of chapters that we haven't even really tapped into, which is like seeing the other date and or be in a different relationship or something, which I don't know how that will look or feel or how that will change the dynamic of things.
Sure.
I think we've both waited to pursue those things until we aren't living together so that it's a little less in anybody's face as far as
Yeah.
dabbling,
Sure.
because you still have all this history with this person that I think that would be jarring no matter how you're ending things with someone. But I don't know. I think we're trying to do it as mindfully as possible with as little casualty as we can.
That's
Um,
huge.
yeah, I don't know. I can't tell you how many times I've Googled shit of how to, which also brings me to another point. So annoying. And the independent go-getter, ambitious person that I am, I'm like, I'm going to do it, but I have no business doing it. Is that so? I've Googled a gajillion different things a gajillion different times. And it's maybe my questions are like, what does, how can you like move beyond a divorce? And I don't mean a checklist of make sure you have separate bank accounts, make sure that your
Right.
finances are in order, double check who the beneficiaries are. I don't mean like that's all basic stuff. But I mean, like, what emotions can you
Mm,
expect or what stages do you go through? It's not as simple just equating it to a grief system
mm,
or something. Yes, you do grieve the loss of this union and the future you potentially had and things like that. You do that, but you still have a life to live
yeah.
after that. And how do you move forward? What sort of, I guess for me, is how can I move forward, making sure that I have done enough introspection or at least am conscious of things I need to work on? Because I will absolutely be fucking triggered by people who drink.
Yeah.
I will assume that everyone has a drinking problem
Mm,
if they drink. And
mhm.
I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be like watching how much someone drinks or how they behave when they drink. That should be a relatively normal thing. Like the same thing as when I was talking about the abusive boyfriend. I don't
Yeah.
want to flinch when someone moves their arm or of my own faults, get a little jabby when you're annoying me or um when you're just stupid. I don't know. Like
Yeah.
there's the asshole. So I want to make sure that where is that coming from within me? Why do I feel like I need to cut someone when
Mm,
they don't do a certain kind of thing? So all of that to say, because I'm long-winded, so sorry, is that when you Google something like this, the only thing that ever came up for me in Google searches is that basically, so your husband left you. Now what? And that's not how it was. Like,
mm,
I chose to be divorced. I'm choosing this path. Yes, he did cheat, but that is not why, that's reason number 4 or 5 why we are getting divorced, is
yeah.
not a leading contender. But it was like, and two, I'm not a religious person, but it seemed like any books that were, because I don't know, I feel like we're similar in that way of I have a problem. What book can I read?
Yep.
Like, no, no, any of the books were heavily rooted in like religion, which is not my jam at all.
Mhm.
And or the marriage and unions that they seem to be referencing was like almost like subservient.
Okay.
Um, where like the woman was just like she raised the kids and she didn't have a job or a career or education or anything like and had no money and things like that. And I'm just like, Jesus, could we get something in the middle here? I stood up for myself and believe I'm worth more. And I wanted this divorce, but
Mm.
I'm feeling all these things and I'm not entirely, I don't have all the answers. I don't know necessarily how to move forward or to just make sure that I'm putting my best foot forward because it can only be the rest and best of my life if I'm making moves like that. But there has been a lot of this last year where it's just sedentary. Nothing
Mm.
happens. And I've noticed patterns within myself where I'm like, I'm not liking that. That's not an
Mm.
elevated life. That's not a woman or a habit of a woman who's about to embark on the next best stage. Like, I don't like this, but like there are just certain things where I'm just and then too, like the worst part, as confident as I am, I have lived alone, but it has been obviously close to 20 years.
Yeah.
I have had many moments of questioning, and I own a salon. I've raised whole humans. Like,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but I wonder if I'm capable of getting the garbage out on the
Mm.
right day. Or I don't, we have the water dispenser thing, like the big jug thing. So
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to bring that 5 gallon bucket in here. There, there's
Yeah.
just little stuff like that. I'm not as much worried about like the finances and stuff. So I am coming from a place of I chose poverty to be with my kids and to release myself from the pressures of being behind the chair and
Mm.
stuff. So I am not generating the income that I have been very used to bringing in,
Yeah.
but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. But those are all things that I'm just like, what was I thinking?
Oh.
Or how can I make sure of? Or am I really ready for this? Or
Mm.
am I just chasing what feels good or what I think will feel good without actually really thinking this through? There is a lot of stuff. And so I guess really quick to go back to the point of my Google searches and stuff, there's nothing
There's no
that
support.
like there yeah, and there's nothing that really fits what I'm
Mm.
experiencing. Like my husband didn't leave me. I am not destitute. Where are those books and or blog? And I'm not a man hater and I don't hate him. Like I
Uh,
also don't want to read a book that's like, oh, this piece of shit.
mm.
Like I don't want that either. Then the funny part is that I'm like, I'm gonna start a blog and I'm gonna write about this and then nope, we are not gonna do that. But
Oh. Mm.
but because now some of the stuff is just so far gone that I don't even know. I don't know. I would have to have somebody asking me questions for me to dive into a thing to
Yeah.
remember how that felt or how I handled it or whatever, because it's just all muddled.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot out there for someone going through any type of divorce, I feel, other than here's your checklist,
Yeah.
best of luck, go get
Mm.
your hair done and buy some new clothes so you can have a glow up and like all
Sign
will
up
be
on a
well.
dating site and
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
Oh,
messy. It's
that's really interesting that there's just nothing out there for that.
if I would challenge people, whoever is listening to this or who is going through a divorce, or maybe ask your friend that is going through one, or friend or client, whichever
Friend.
one,
Mhm.
and ask her to Google different things with divorce and stuff. And I would be shocked if she found anything different than me, but if she did, I expect links.
You got
I
it.
challenge anyone
Mhm.
to go search for this. Like I came up empty-handed.
That's so interesting because seems to be so common and they say 50% of marriages end in divorce. But isn't it one of those things too that can't really be generalized either? It's
No.
everybody's journey is so different through it and everybody's choices are different and everybody's relationship ends up differently. And then whether there's kids or not kids or addict issues and not addict issues, abuse
Yeah,
situations or
it's kind of like
um,
those books that you could pick the what would you like to do now? Go to page 37 when it
choose
was,
your own
it's like
adventure.
that. Yeah, choose your own adventure. Yes. But also, I wonder too, maybe I'm asking the wrong question because maybe it's not a divorce book that I need to be
Mm.
looking for. It's more of a, but that seems overwhelming, more of a psychology type book or something, but I still would need that pared down. I used to have this book when I had babies, and it was because when you have your first baby, it's true what they say. When you have your first baby, you're scared to death of everything. You're going to
Yeah.
ruin this kid. You're going to break it. I don't know. Like, why did they let you leave the hospital with this thing?
Yeah.
Second kid, you don't give a shit. You're just like, oh, wipe some
Been there,
dirt
done
on it.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I had this book that was like an encyclopedia, and it had could search like runny nose. And it wasn't as terrifying as like WebMD. Like
Yeah.
it wouldn't be like, oh, your 18-month-old is going to die of like typhoid fever or something like that. But
Mhm.
it would be like, okay, here are the potential things. Don't panic. Try this and this first. And it was just a way, it was just so compartmentalized and simple that
Mhm.
I was like, okay, we're gonna run a hot shower and we're gonna sit on the toilet. Like I'm gonna sit with my baby like on the toilet, like just in this steamy room, and then we're gonna wait 6 hours and see can we get any of this out or whatever. I want a book like that
Yeah.
for if you're feeling some type of way, maybe it's this or this. Here,
Yeah.
go for a walk, but not the gross little platitudes of like self-care. Like you need a spa day.
Mhm.
What problems does that solve? None. None.
It may distract you and let you relax for that hour, 2 hours,
Yeah.
whatever, and then you're back into your feelings and real life. Yeah.
Yeah. And you like try not to, at least for me. I cried just recently in front of my kids, and I'm pretty honest about that stuff, but and it wasn't about the divorce stuff, but I had stuffed down enough stuff that I'm sure some of it was this situation, but I was just leaking. I couldn't stop it. And obviously, I'm around my kids. My kids noticed it and they asked me, "Are you okay? Can you tell me about it?" Like they mommed me. They were like,
Oh.
are you ready to talk about it? Can you tell me anything that it, because they know that they're the kids and I'm going to shelter them to some degree, but I was like, I just having a bad day and I'm sad and I miss my friend and I feel like I'm messing up over here and
Mm.
that I'm just not I can't process it today and it's late and it's dark out. I can't go for a walk. Like all these things. And I
Mhm.
just let them have it. And they were like, okay, can I go hang out with Susie or whatever? I'm like, yes, that would be great. And I don't know. I want that book that just says, okay, get into your car and blast Papa Roach and have a good cry. And it's okay
Yeah.
to cry. And I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a lot, but
For sure. I believe that you're proving this point that even when a divorce is amicable, it's still traumatizing. And
hugely traumatizing.
I currently have a friend who's getting divorced and they don't have kids. They haven't been married very long. They're young, but it's still like he has expressed to his family that it is one of the hardest things he's ever had to go through. And it's not been ugly through the financial stuff. Like they both work. It's pretty easy to split everything up. Like they don't even own a house. It's
Yeah.
it's a relatively easy divorce and it's still emotionally a really traumatizing thing. And I think that I have not been through what you've been through, and everybody out there that has been through this is probably going to punch me in the face for trying to come up with a solution. But I just think that you probably need to heal from what this is and probably get through it with him moving out and then finalizing the divorce and having everything in a final place to then be able to start to process the emotions. That's my
I
thought.
think I think that's true to a big degree for sure. And I have a head start on him even because
Yeah.
as women, we start running through all the scenarios. Do I want this? Do I not want this? How will this affect like all the things we talked about a little bit ago or whatever. But so I definitely am much more advanced in the process than he is.
And you were
Um,
the one that had already processed that it was over before he
yeah,
had to. Yeah.
for sure. And so I know that, and I haven't wavered either with different scenarios because he has gone out on a few dates and stuff and I like
Oh,
cheered him on, which really messed him up. Like he
oh,
was like, that
interesting.
feels gross to have you because he even now still doesn't want the divorce.
Mm,
And so that is he's doing his best, but he, for me to be like excited for him to meet other people, is he called it a dick punch. So is like a dick punch to him. That's the
Yes,
thing.
I
But
can.
also I didn't feel good after he went out on a date, but I still am confident in my decision. It's because it was like jarring that we have been in this relationship or whatever, and he's not supposed to go out on this date because this is, we were married.
Yeah.
But it doesn't change anything for
Mm.
me long term. He still cannot fulfill what I envision now for the rest of my life, and vice versa. Maybe he thinks I can, but I don't think so. Like, we want different things. We are different people, very different people, like
Yeah.
to where we don't have the common ground anymore. We won't be raising kids pretty soon. It will only be each other. That is a heavy load for someone you can't find common ground
A
with.
lot of
So,
people get to that point and then can't find that common ground and end up divorced anyway. I remember talking to a ton of clients that were going through that were coming up on empty nesting or were empty nesters, and they were like, we almost got divorced, or we did get divorced, or that's a whole different chapter of life that nobody talks about, I think, as much as when the kids leave and you then are just with this person that you have to figure out life again with.
and then I think I question that union because either you really are going like full force into finding or creating common ground, and that's so great, or y'all have just agreed to do your own thing, and that feels icky to me. At
Mm.
least for myself, I don't want a marriage like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm all about doing my own thing. I don't need you to hold my hand while I go to the bathroom or anything like that. Like, I don't need to be like living and breathing my person,
Yeah.
but I need there to be enough of something for it to be worth staying,
Yeah.
regardless of how I benefit from
Yeah. I love how honest you're being about being in the midst of this, because that's one of the reasons why I decided to start this podcast, is because I have found very little support of people in the midst of my situation as well.
it. Yeah.
And most people that talk about it and write books about it and write blogs about it or whatever have already gone through it and processed it and been done with it. And when you're in the midst of it, it's really hard to see that light at the end of the tunnel. And I really appreciate your honest insight to just even just the feelings, because it's obviously not like a terribly ugly divorce, but the feelings that you're going through and the things that you're going through. I'm sure everybody has thought of that to some degree going through a divorce.
Yeah. And even just when we were talking about like the blog, like
Yeah.
me starting a blog because I
Mhm.
couldn't find the resources that I wanted.
Yeah.
And now being like, oh, maybe I should still do it or something like that. I'm so far removed, it feels like, from
Mhm.
even those early stages of things that like it wouldn't be real. I don't even know what I know how I felt, which is not going to paint an accurate picture of the situation. It's going to be very heavily swayed on my side of this is
Yeah.
how I felt. This was whatever, because I don't even remember half the stuff.
Mm.
So I think that this is so good that you are having like conversations with people who hopefully are in the middle of something, but if not, then that's great too. But it feels very different to finish anything than even just building my salon. The end feels very different than the process of the
Yes.
red tape of the city approvals and could I fill the salon and all that stuff. You always hope for the best, but it doesn't always it doesn't always work out like that. And then you get to the good stuff and you're like, oh, maybe it wasn't as bad as I remember.
Yeah.
Like,
But I think we need to acknowledge that journey in between because,
mhm.
like I said, I'm struggling right now with the possibility of living a childless life. And I see all these people on Instagram who are like this is my childless life. And they're all people that are childless, not by choice, because I think by choice is a different processing process as well.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, it's better than I ever imagined it. And look at what I get to do. I get to sleep in and I get to do all these things and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just sitting here like still in the midst of, I haven't quite accepted that yet. And is that okay? Or does that mean there's something wrong with me because I haven't been like, I'm living the best life I've ever lived? But I do believe that we get to that point, even your abusive relationship from before, like you got to that point, you
Yeah.
found the silver lining, it shaped who you were, you found your self-worth. It's there. But when you're in the icky,
Yeah.
it's icky and it's hard. It's so hard to see that light at the end of the tunnel.
And be, it's hard to, it's hard to present yourself in a way that is acceptable for other people too, like during that.
Ooh. Ooh. Unpack that more.
Okay, so one of the biggest things through this divorce situation is that there are very few people that I talk to about it because it feels burdensome. And they're much like my ex had did to me, where it was like we had the same conversation over and over again.
Mm,
My conversations are similar because when you're in these heightened emotional states, you don't know what you've shared. You don't know, and maybe something happened, but it wasn't relevant to this portion of whatever it is you're regurgitating to this friend that you're confiding in or whatever. So then you're recounting it over and over again, and you're feeling the same things, or you're feeling defeated or something like that. And so like eventually you just stop talking to people. Lisa in Soul Tribe, like
yeah.
she's always like, you haven't been very active in Marco Polo, or you haven't been, whatever. And I'm just like, I don't have anything to contribute. I am in a growth stage of my life.
Mm,
And for me to extract anything from that would take hours of my life I'm not willing to invest. If you're listening to 2 hours worth of Marco Polos of other people going through other stuff, I can contribute as a salon owner, whatever. But in order for me to deduct that from the conversation that's happening, plus also too, I'm not in the stage of my life where I have anything to give anyone else. I am depleted.
mm,
Anything that I have needs to go to my kids and to nurturing this new friendship with my soon to be ex-husband. That is all that I have. But on the flip side of that, like even my best friend, this is part might make me really sad, but like I helped her through her divorce and I had never experienced that before. I gave her the best advice that I could, which is, if you can imagine, real. I don't have
yeah.
the answers, but if this were me, I think that I would do this, or I would feel this type of way, or I hate that you're feeling this way, or maybe we need like a girls' trip that involves a cry sesh, or I don't know. I tried to do whatever. That hasn't been the case for me. She, in particular, has been pretty unavailable. So I
Mm,
feel like I'm just floating. And then you don't want to talk to different people because I don't want people to form opinions who don't know my ex very well or anything. I don't want them to jump to conclusions and stuff because he has incredible qualities. They just no longer work for me. And I don't want it to be gross like that. And two, a lot of people are not equipped for the conversations that we are dying to have with someone,
yeah.
anyone,
Yeah.
the real feelings of this fucking sucks. I don't know what to do. How do people deal with this? Where do they go from here? Is it okay that I feel this way? Is it okay that I want to give up? How do I not want to give up? How do I get past this place? Tell me it's going to work out without telling me everything's going to be fine. There's so much. And so you just don't talk to people. Because most people are not equipped to receive and respond to what is weighing heavy on you.
Hmm.
I don't know. It's just a
Ugh,
lot.
that hits me so like I don't want to compare my story or my struggles to yours because it's
I
different,
think that you should,
but
though. I think that it is very relevant.
those
You are,
feelings, everything you just said, I'm like, it's so true.
and on the flip, I feel like you have to compare it. There are so many parallel. You are dealing with feelings of just, in its most basic form, fucking resentment. Because
Yeah.
why couldn't this work? Why couldn't my marriage work? Why couldn't your thing work?
Yes.
Like, why?
Why me? The anger.
Why you? Yeah. Was there anything more that I could have done? Is there something
Mm.
that I could have done differently?
And when you're
And
talking about giving up too, that's what I'm facing right now too. And I've been sharing with people more recently that because I fully believe I put myself through hell and I tried as much as I possibly could, physically, emotionally, financially, all of those things. But when you haven't explored all the options, when people ask me that stuff, have you thought about this? Or have you thought about that? Or have you done this? Or have you done that? I'm like, no, but that may not be the best fit for me. And that needs to be okay. And I need to not feel like I don't want it bad enough
mm-hmm,
because I didn't explore all the options or that doesn't fit with me because that's not true, or that I'm
yeah,
just giving up because I didn't do all the things.
yeah. Just because one path didn't, I feel like I know what you're talking about because that's not how you wanted to do that. And so that would be no different than me with the divorce and stuff. I never wanted to be divorced. When I asked him probably a year or so before I said that I wanted one, I asked him if he was willing to go to couples therapy again, things like that. He was not. I don't think he knew what was in his future as far as that. We were at like a stalemate basically.
Yeah.
And that's not that different from you. This was how you wanted to do this. It didn't work out. Like you don't want to go the other way. You
Yeah.
don't, and that is okay. Like I don't, if he, if the roles were reversed for me and he wanted the divorce or something, but he wanted it to be like an open marriage or something like that, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So you're saying I have to sacrifice in these kinds of ways just to stay married?
Yeah.
Like, that's gross.
Yeah.
That's not me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I did, you did, you general did everything that I feel like you cannot make this decision lightly, no matter what it is. But that doesn't change the fact that the emotions and the turmoil and the devastation isn't real.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
Yeah.
nobody is equipped to handle that. I
Yeah.
don't think. I've tried to talk to my mom. I've tried to talk to my dad. My dad just doesn't really want to talk about it. Or he always says, oh, if he would just quit drinking. I'm like, no, dad, we're past that. We're done. And my mom is, oh, it will all work out. And I'm just like, really? List three ways you know how that will be.
Yeah.
Why you know that to be true. And the one person that I can be fully authentic, tell all
Mm.
my gross, dark, dirty thoughts to is unavailable. So then it's just in here.
And that's
I
so
don't know,
isolating and lonely feeling and
which is probably why I started leaking.
but
Yeah,
that's okay.
it's okay.
It's
But
okay.
it's hard to, like, it felt better after I had cried.
It
Like,
doesn't
it
fix
felt
it.
better. It doesn't fix it. I still had no direction. I still it's still something that I need to figure out how to work through and how to take little baby steps in.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and two, I probably won't tell her to listen to this podcast either.
That's okay.
but I lost a little faith in that too.
Yeah.
And that is a me thing. I know that. It's the same thing with the husband. If you become someone that I cannot call and I cannot depend on, I will stop depending and I will stop calling.
And I don't know about you, but for me, I have to have deep relationships with people. I can have surface level relationships with
For
people,
sure.
but it's going to be very surface level. I'm not really an in between kind of person. I'm like a you're
balls
either
to the
like
wall
my
or nothing.
bestie and I'm gonna dump my whole world on you, or I'm not gonna tell you anything. And that's
Yeah.
so you seem similar to that. And yeah, I start to lose those connections with people. I've had it happen with a lot of friends and stuff that I just start to lose that connection if people aren't gonna, and I need people to open up to me too. It's not just
Yeah.
me. I'm not just expecting people to take all my shit on, but I want them to rely on me too. And I want to be that person for them too. But I don't know how to have a relationship without that depth personally.
Yeah. Because it's nothing otherwise, which is also why divorce.
Hmm. Right. Or
What's the
you cut
point?
that friend off, or you,
Hmm.
yeah.
I've cut people off for less.
Uh,
I don't
all right, my
know.
dear. I think I'm gonna have to wrap this up. I feel like
Yeah.
we could talk about stuff
I
for
know we could talk
so
forever.
maybe we'll do a third episode with you because I feel like you and I could just keep talking and I don't know, it's so good.
I
And
know we should just have, I don't know, occasionally just like a word vomit, a fly on the wall friendship discussion where there's no topic or whatever
yeah,
other
we
than
could
just
do
like
that.
what is bugging you.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do a
We
couple
should.
episodes like that. I would love that. All right, my dear.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing all of that. I'm so sorry you're going through all of that. And I'm so sorry you're having a hard time finding the support. And I love you. And that's all
I
I can
love
say. I
you.
can't fix it. So I wish I could. Um, and sometimes life is ugly. I think that's the best I got.
Yep.
Really sorry, but thank you for sharing everything that you have shared. Oh my goodness. Like,
Let's keep it to an hour-ish. Here we are.
I just want you to know that you're a lovely person and that with everything you've gone through, you're just a rock star. And I think you have big things waiting for you, even if you don't believe that. You're amazing. And I'm sorry that you're going through this hard time. And I hope there is a light at the end of the tunnel at some point for you. But
Thanks.
also it's okay to feel the ick. It is.
I
Do you have
I
any?
agree that there's big things. I just don't know how to get there.
I know.
Like that's the real struggle, right?
Yeah. But you're a wonderful human, and
Thanks.
I appreciate you and everything you've done for me too. Yes, and thank you again. I can't thank you enough for sharing everything you've shared on this, being that vulnerable.
Don't make me leak.
I'm gonna make you leak.
Don't do it.
It's the only way to
Don't
end
do
this podcast.
it. No.
Oh, but all right, my dear. Do you have any parting words?
No. I have left my soul in this podcast.
You have, and we are so grateful for it. For those going through divorce, abusive relationships, we covered a lot of ground there. So thank you, everybody, for listening. And I think Courtney will be back again in some capacity because I enjoyed this conversation and I hope you all did
Yay.
too. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.